Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and we're going to finish up a Keynesian multiplier paper 3 type question that we had started working on. If you need a refresher on the Keynesian multiplier, or you need to be introduced to understand the concepts behind the Keynesian multiplier, I recommend this video where I explain it step by step. It's linked below. So let's go back to the question, the last question that we were working on. We went over parts A, B, and C, and now we've left question D. And question D says, using your answers in part C, sketch an aggregate demand, aggregate supply diagram to show the impact of the multiplier. So the IB is asking us to illustrate what this looks like. So to draw that, I'm going to need some information, some data to label on my Keynesian multiplier diagram. I'm going to need the initial injection of 42 billion. So I'm going to make a note of that. I'll put it right here. The initial injection or the initial change in government spending is equal to 42 billion. And the change in real GDP as a result of that injection is equal to, as we calculate here, 168 billion. All right, so I need that. I'm going to go ahead and erase the rest of our work here. That was from our previous, the previous 3 questions that we were working on. And then we're going to go ahead and draw this. And again, this is something that could be asked of you on an IB exam. So let's get rid of this information and then draw step by step the Keynesian multiplier and making sure it's fully labeled correctly, etc. Okay, so let's draw our X and Y axis. Y-axis, I'm sorry, X-axis is measuring real GDP. The Y-axis is measuring the price level, the average price of goods and services within the economy. So here we have our price level. So I am demonstrating my knowledge by labeling the axes, and then we'll have our downward sloping aggregate demand curve. I'm going to go ahead and label that 81, aggregate demand curve 1. Now what happened here is we're at 81, and again, we're mindful that aggregate demand is the sum of consumption spending plus investment spending plus government spending plus exports minus imports. And in this question, it says that the government is changing their spending and increasing it by 42 billion. So government spending is going to increase, and that's going to cause aggregate demand to shift out. So it's going to go from 81 to 82. Actually, let me undo that. I have it a little bit, it's maybe too far out. Draw it here. Here we go. So this will be 82. So this is reflective of the initial change in government spending. So we need to label that. I'm going to label this as the autonomous spending. Right? The initial injection is what we call autonomous spending. And that autonomous spending, the value of that autonomous spending is 42 billion. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate my knowledge and illustrate that the initial change in government spending was valued at 42 billion. Then it multiplies out 4 times. Again, we were highlighting how the change in government spending will initiate the multiplier, and the multiplier that we calculated was 4, and that's going to lead to the change in real GDP. So 80 is going to multiply out from 82 to 83. So I'll have that drawn here. I'll label that 83. I have 80 shifting out due to that multiplier effect from 82 to 83, and that is called induced spending. So I have to label that too. And that's going to be called induced spending. The value of the total spending from 81 to 83 is 168 billion. So I'm going to also draw on my diagram here that the total spending here is 168 billion. Right, that is the total spending, 168 billion. I'm missing the value here. What is the value of the induced spending? So I'm just going to take 168 billion minus the 42 billion, and that's going to be equal to the induced spending, which is 126 billion. All right, so what I did there is I took total spending, or the change in GDP, minus the autonomous spending, and that's going to be equal to the induced spending. Okay, so I'm just going to add that into my chart, and I'm basically done with that question. 126 billion. So the government changes government spending by 42 billion. They increase government spending by 42 billion. So that causes aggregate demand to shift out from 81 to 82. That kicks off the multiplier effect. 82 shifts out from 82 to 83 as a result of that multiplier effect of additional spending of 126 billion. The sum of 126 plus 42 is 168 billion of total spending. So that is the change in real GDP. One other thing I could do, I don't have to do, but I could do on this question is I can label the changes in Y. So let me use this here. Let's keep the price level constant. Just have it run across here. Here I have a particular price level set, and I'm just going to mark these intersections. I can say point A to point B to point C, and then look at the x-intercept of that. So that's real GDP, the value of real GDP at those points. So I can label that Y1, Y2 to Y3. All right, so the government spends 42 billion, aggregate demand shifts out from Y1 to Y2. The distance between Y1 and Y2 is 42 billion. That causes the multiplier effect to take hold. Aggregate demand shifts out 82 to 83, or from Y2 to Y3. The value of that is 126 billion. The total change in real GDP, 168 billion. So that is question D. Using your answer in part C, sketch an ADAS diagram to show the impact of the multiplier. And there you have it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment those questions below. Don't forget to subscribe and to like, and I will provide some additional Keynesian multiplier questions in the days ahead. Thank you so much.